Good morning. Today I want to talk to you about this cat named John Brehm. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. His last name's spelled Brehm. He has come out with a series of anthologies that I think are some of the best anthologies of poetry out there. The first one is called The Poetry of Impermanence, Mindfulness, and Joy. And it looks like this. I highly recommend it. And then he came out with another volume called The Poetry of Grief, Gratitude, and Reverence. And that one looks like this. Also highly recommend. And then there's a third anthology, and it's called The Dharma of Poetry. And it looks like this. Now, the first two are your traditional poetry anthologies, but this is actually a book of his essays, and each essay in here is focused on a poem in the other two anthologies. And I will like to read. I won't read a poem or an essay. What I want to actually read to you is pieces of the introduction to this book. And I'm going to skip around a little bit. This is a book about poetry as a source of wisdom. It argues not that poems are or should be didactic or prophetic, or that poems or poets be regarded as sages, making grand pronouncements about the meaning of life, but that poems embody and implicitly endorse ways of being in the world that anyone engaged in spiritual practice or anyone wanting to live a more mindful life might want to emulate. Here's an example of what I mean. A haiku by the great Japanese poet Issa, 1763 to 1828, translated by Robert Hass. I'm going to roll over, so please move, cricket. The poem, like many of Issa's, is charming in its simplicity, its childlike innocence. Didn't we all once talk to animals, large and small? The poem is nothing more, but also nothing less than a gentle warning and request spoken by a person to a cricket. The poet is not telling us how to live or arguing for the virtue of non-harming. Instead, Issa demonstrates an attitude towards life and a way of behaving whose ethical dimension is plain to see. Even insects deserve our respect. The poem seems to say, deserve to live out their lives and not be harmed, simply for being in our way. It's important also to note that the poem is not addressed to us, but to the cricket. And what is the significance of that? What are we to make of a man speaking to an insect? It suggests a friendliness and care that Issa extends to all beings, even the most lowly among us. Indeed, the poem may be seen as a subtle subversion of the hierarchy which we humans impose, always to our own benefit on the world around us. It implies that we are not separate from the more important than the creatures with whom we share this life, that we can and should address them as equals, and that we can be mindful of their well-being and we move through the world. As we move through the world, sorry. All this in just 3 lines, and without ever making a direct assertion about how one should live. Such is the power of poetry. By focusing on what poems show us, what ways of being in the world they're recommending, we see that poems can serve as spiritual teachers, and that the teachings they offer are both simple and profound. Pay attention. Walk through the world with reverence and wonder. Look closely at extraordinary experiences and even more closely at ordinary ones. See the likeness in seemingly dissimilar things. Delight in the world's impermanent delights. Feel into the joys and sufferings of others. Treat all beings with respect. Love the earth and know that you are not separate from it. Talk to animals, plants, rivers, mountains, trees. Listen for what they say back to you. These are elemental truths, the kinds of truth a child could understand, but which modern adults have been encouraged to forget. In the form of abstract imperatives, they may not move us very deeply, but to see them embodied and enacted in poems, given shape and texture in the richness of language, its sound and image in the rhythm and voice of a poem is an entirely different experience. The Buddhist environmental activist Jonah Macy writes, "The crisis that threatens our planet derives from a dysfunctional and pathological notion of the self. It derives from a mistake about our place in the order of things. It is the delusion that the self is so separate and fragile that we must delineate and defend its boundaries, that it is so small and so needy that we must endlessly acquire and endlessly consume, and that as individuals, corporations, nation states, or a species, we can be immune to what we do to other beings. This belief that we are separate from the earth and superior to all other living things is the root cause of our suffering and the suffering we are inflicting on the planet. The poems will be exploring undermine that belief, not by arguing against it, but by showing how wondrous it feels when the illusion of separation falls away." So that's just a brief selection of the introduction to this wonderful book and these wonderful anthologies. I highly recommend them, and I hope you search them out and read them. Have a wonderful day.